Hi loves, so here's our sophisticated transitions mini lesson research. So we know from when we were younger why it's important to do transitions, that if you're telling someone how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something that you learned in fifth grade or how to create a pizza, that it's important to give transitions in between the steps to clarify your instructions. Or maybe you're telling someone how to get from the high school downtown, you must include transitions. And then as we continued on, we learned about different kinds of transitions. And so we're sort of at one of those stages in our development where we have to kind of step it up and move on from first, next, and last, and also, and start looking more clearly at why transitions are important and how they work in more sophisticated writing. So, why transitions? Because they clarify the logic of your argument. And in this research paper, it is an argument research paper. And so, it's really important that you, like all of the famous speechwriters that we studied, use some facets of rhetoric to logically prove to them that you know what you're talking about and that your argument is valid and reliable. And transitions will help you get there. The second thing is to bring the reader along with you as you develop your ideas between sentences and paragraphs. Because sometimes we know why we put something first and something next and something last, but they may not be able to follow your thought process. So it's really important to bring them along with you as you develop your ideas. And finally, it just helps create flow in your writing. It's a lot easier to read, and if things are easier to read, then people will be more apt to listen to your argument. So here we see some different transition words and phrases that probably look familiar, and they're broken into categories. Addition, when you add something, when you're having multiple ideas. Sequence and order, when something is first, next, and last. And we overuse this as all the time, actually. And so it's really important to think about what category, if it's addition or sequence and order, contrast, if it's an exception to the rule, if it's comparing and contrasting, cause and effect, emphasis, illustration, summary, whatever the case is, you have to think of why you're using it and in what kind of category it fits, because we're really thinking about how one idea relates to the next. If we're going to include an example, then we go to the illustration. If we're talking about, like for example, in this argument writing, some of you guys are looking at the cause and effect, that not listening enough can result in depression, relationship problems, etc. So these would be some really great ones to use. Maybe you're putting particular emphasis on a point as you're creating a quotation to support what you're saying. Or maybe one idea of your counter argument contrasts with your idea, so we go here. But it's really important to think about what really is the relationship between my ideas, and how can I lead my reader with me. So transition words and phrases are great. We've learned those since we were younger. Now we're going to think about transitions in a little bit more of a sophisticated way, and I'm breaking it into three categories for you. The first one is transition signals, which is what these words and phrases that we just looked at kind of act as. These words or phrases indicate the logic that connects the sets of information. So they act as signals, just like a green light signals you to go move your car in traffic, and a red light signals you to stop. These kinds of words signal the reader as to what is coming next, or even perhaps what has come before, which we'll talk about. So some signals, like on the other hand, will create the other side of the argument. For example, you know what will follow will be a quotation or a paraphrase or a detail, because you know that will be an effect. Then you know that's something that happened after, etc. And these can be great transition tools for sentences and paragraph levels. But it's really important, like I said in the last slide, to really pay attention to the meaning of the transition words. Don't just throw in a to start or next when it doesn't really have anything to do with why you're moving from one point to the next. It's really important that they reflect the actual relationship between the ideas so that your reader can follow you smoothly and fluidly. So let's take a look at some of I'm a Good Writer's. This is her first subtopic, so she has 2 paragraphs, and if you remember from the outline, her first subtopic is about the counterargument. So she needs to establish why people think that standards-based education is such a great idea. So, but we're just going to look at how she used some of the different ones. So in essence, she's emphasizing not only but also she's giving extra information. She's also showing sort of like a compare and contrast. Another, she's adding information. However, she's showing the other side. In other words, she's restating both. She's kind of emphasizing. For example, she's illustrating. In addition, she's adding further. Okay, so you can see how all of these serve as a variety of purposes, and notice that very few of them are the same. And not at all does she say first, next, or last. So it's really important to move beyond those that we've learned when we were younger and really start to think about how to communicate in a more sophisticated way. So beyond just the signal words, the transition signal words, there's other ways to do it. So you can signal through review words. This is where you link groups of sentences or whole paragraphs. So rather than just within the paragraph and sentence like we were talking about with the last slide, this is a little bit bigger. It really links whole ideas. And what you can do with review words, and by the word review, you know you're going over it, you can condense your preceding discussion into a brief word or phrase. So if your previous paragraph was all about the pros of wearing a bicycle helmet, you can just make that into one little word or phrase and say something like the benefits of bicycle helmets, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you can condense that down. What these review words allow you to do is not only review what's just happened for the reader, but you can also signal your own understanding of the work. So as you're explaining your quotations and your ideas, this is your chance to review and reflect on what you've provided in your argument. So think of review words as like a super short summary of key ideas, or I like to call them echoes of what you just wrote about. And you'll see some examples here with Ima over here. She talks about standards-based education. Then she says the philosophy itself is sound. So she's referring or reviewing back to this. Here, embedded in high standards, she's reviewing this discussion about high standards. Here she says, it seems logical then that standards do create a solid foundation, because what she said right here is essentially that she's talking about how they create a solid foundation. So these are acting sort of as conclusive kind of review statements as transition. Here, this is between paragraphs. While the philosophy behind standards-based education is practical in theory, what she's doing is she's essentially using this transitional phrase to review everything that she talked about in this paragraph. And this is an incredibly powerful way of just bringing the reader with you, holding their hand, saying, hey, remember this? This is what I just talked about, but now I'm going to talk about this. So I didn't just write, Ima didn't just write, next, there are significant drawbacks. She really brought you from the last point, and it echoed the last point and brought you into the next point. Here was a list of drawbacks. Here she reviews it and transitions you into the next one. And so you could see there's a number of them on here. And these are really, really, really powerful. So we just did review words. Now there's also preview words where you do the same thing, but you condense an upcoming discussion or main point into a brief word or phrase. This prepares readers for what is to come. So like a preview in a movie, you give the reader a glimpse of what is to come. So let's see how she does it. Here, there are 2 central ideas. She's just saying, oh, hey, guess what? I'm going to talk about 2 central ideas. So that kind of directs them to do that. Cole discusses another idea. So I know that another idea beyond this is coming. So she's previewing. It seems logical. What seems logical? Oh, she's going to tell you about it. And then here, and just like we looked at while philosophy reviewed, this is actually previewing. They take away personalization in both learning and teaching. So what she's doing is she's previewing what's going to come in the next paragraph, and then she's reviewing what came in the previous paragraph here. So it creates a beautiful bridge between the two ideas. There's some other examples in this second paragraph of her first subtopic. There are significant drawbacks, which she started talking about. For example, she's previewing. She's previewing the drawbacks that she'll discuss. For example, she's showing that an example is coming. She's going to talk about the consequences, and she's going to talk about the opposite of reform. So really, she's just showing what's coming next. And again, the more you can take them with you, take your reader with you, the better off you are. So transition sentences are really, really key between paragraphs, and they can indicate the connection between the preceding and upcoming pieces of your argument, like we looked at, and I'll show you again in her first subtopic. They often contain one or more of the transition tools that we just reviewed: transition signals, review words, preview words. And it really shows maturity as a writer. You're moving beyond just those single words, and showing that you understand what you're writing about and why you're writing it. And it's important to note that transition sentences can be the last sentence of a previous paragraph or the first sentence of a paragraph, or it can kind of bridge both, which we're going to look at with Ima. So here she has two transition sentences that bridge the gap between her first paragraph and second paragraph of her subtopic. So just as we looked at however, when people use units of measure, yada, 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 in other words, turn student success into test score, they take away the personalization. This is at once reviewing what happened, but also previewing what is to come. While the philosophy is practical, in reality there are drawbacks. So it's really important to know that it can go here, it can go here, it can go both. But either way, a transitional sentence, as you're doing what we call like a concluding sentence, you can incorporate those transitions right into there and move your audience into your next paragraph. These things become super, super important as you begin to write longer and longer papers, including what you'll be writing for here in the independent project, but also what you'll be writing for your senior year to pass high school. And it's going to be amazing. So some final thoughts. Transitions are more than just words or phrases. They are the thread that weaves your argument together. If you were to review everything that I highlighted back in those two paragraphs, the majority of what I wrote is transitioning. It's not just listing. It's not just quote plopping. It's really taking your reader in a logical way and threading and weaving your argument together. Another final thought is to think about, if you can't find a way to write a logical transition between sentences, ideas, or paragraphs, you probably aren't being clear in your organization. You might have to move things around or take them out or rearrange them, because you're going to need to revise it if it doesn't make sense. And that will become easier as you write more papers. But really, transitions are so important. They make a lot of your paper, a lot of your paragraphs. They make up a lot of your paper and paragraphs. And once you start practicing and really thinking about how ideas relate to one another, these things will flow much more easily. So good luck with your first, or some of your first attempt at some more sophisticated transitions. Here's the works cited. The works cited is I'm a Good Writer, of course, because we used her paper. And then also I got a lot of this information from a transitions document from Vanderbilt University's Writing Studio. So if you want to check out more, you can go there. Enjoy!